Okay. So just very simply, what might the red bar mean? What might the red bar mean? He said Z. The value of Z. It's showing the value of Z. Agree? I see some yeses. That's what I intended. Okay? So by the red bar, I'm saying this is the value of used memory space in your smartphone, Z. Variables vary, right? So you all know that what's being used up in your smartphone at any given time is changing, right? It's changing. You're downloading new apps, new music, movies, videos. You're deleting things. So the amount of amount of memory space in your smartphone is changing. So it's a good example of a variable. Okay, what about the blue bar? What about the blue bar? What might it be showing? The amount of space still free. Okay? Is it the amount of space still free now? What about now? Yeah. A change in Z. DZ. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, like the blue bar could represent like the total amount the new application will take up.
Okay.
As it's downloading.
Okay. So any other one? Yeah. Is the length of the blue bar changing?
No.
Is it changing? So the first he nailed it. I just mean that the blue bar is a change in Z. So what are we seeing? So at first, what is our memory space in our phone? How much? 4.7, 4.8, and then what happens? We're using up more space by an amount, dz, a change in how much we're using up. So now the new value of z is something like 7.2. Okay? So show them both. So does the value of z, the value of dz, and how they're represented here make sense? Does that visually make sense to you? Z being how much space is used, total space. dz is being some amount of change in that amount of space used. Okay, look at your sheet. Go on the page that starts for each question 1 through 6. The top of the page says for each question 1 through 6. So we're going to do these together, okay? We're going to do these together. Number 1. So for each of these, you're going to assign or find the value of the initial value of z, the final value of z, and the change in z. Either of those will be given, or you'll have to find it. One of them you'll have to find. And then when we're done with that, let's just do that for number 1. So at first, there is 3 gigs being used. So let's show that. Stop. Okay, so at first, there's 3 gigs being used. And then what happens? I download a file, and then in the end, there is 5.5 being used. Here's the illustration of that situation. Do you see that? So when we start, there's 3 gigs being used. When you're finished downloading, there's 5.5 gigs being used. So what I want you to do is write the value of zi, the initial value of z, write the value of zf, the final value of z, write the value of dz in this situation. Which one is the unknown? dz was the unknown according to the information I gave you. So now I want you to write a formula for how, using those variables in the box, write the formula for dz equals what? dz equals what, according to the other variables? I don't have my pen, so I can't write on the screen. So don't jump ahead. We're going to go slow. We want this to sink in. This is not about finding answers. This is about understanding the difference between, the difference between z and dz. The difference between z and dz. That's what we're after, understanding that. So, after looking at number one, look at the illustration again. Do you see how those three values are related? You see how those three values are related? What did you have for in the formula for dz? dz was our unknown. dz equals somebody? Yeah, in the back.
dz equals zf.
zf minus zi. It should make perfect sense. There should be nothing that's surprising or hard to understand about that. Perfect sense. Okay, let's go on to the next one. At first, 0.9. Can I do that? How am I doing this? Steady hand. Good enough. Okay? Here we go. What does it say? At first, 0.9 gigabytes of memory is being used, then you downloaded a file that's 0.5 gigabytes in size. Find the values, or just write down the values of zi, zf, and dz. Determine the unknown, and write a formula for the unknown. Okay. Look at the picture. Stare at the picture. Does it agree with what you're thinking about the numbers? Does that coincide with the numbers, the picture, the animation? Questions on number two? Questions on number two? Okay, next one, number three. At first, there's 0.3. Then you downloaded a file, and after you downloaded a file, there was 1.2 gigs of memory being used. There we go. Okay, what is Z initial? 0.3. What is Z final? Is it 1.2? Yes, it's 1.2. What is DZ? 0.9. What's the formula for DZ was the unknown. What's the formula for DZ? ZF minus Z final. Okay, so we're going to take a pause here. Questions on number three? Does the picture agree with what we just said with the numbers for number three? Does it agree with the values that we're talking about? Question in the back, nice and loud.
Can you restate the final
So what's the unknown in number 3? What do you think the unknown is? So at first we know how it's being used, and after we download the file, 1.2 was being used. So what's the unknown? So what is that? ZI, ZF, or DZ? So we know how much memory was being used on your phone at first, and then we know how much was being used at the end. So the unknown thing is the change, right? Do you see that? We're given that you started off with 0.3 on your phone, right here. I'll show it right here. Come on. We're given that your phone started with that much memory, the red bar. And then at the end, that much memory was taking up on your phone, the red bar, 1.2. So what's the unknown? The blue bar is the unknown, or the change, DZ. Do you see it? DZ is the unknown. And so to calculate that, it's going to be the final minus initial, ZF minus ZI. Okay, so now I want you to get a partner, and I want you to verbalize, take a pause here. How is a value of Z different from a value of DZ? How is a value of Z different than a value of DZ? You get a partner, you're going to talk it out, and then you're going to write what you guys decide on. Okay? How is a value of Z different than a value of DZ? Talk it out, then write. Okay, how is the value of Z different than the value of DZ? How is the value of Z? Yes, ma'am? Okay, she said Z is a fixed quantity and DZ is a changing quantity. Okay, so I think you're thinking the right thing, but by saying that Z is a fixed quantity, that's dangerous, right? Because Z is changing, right? Z is not fixed, it's not constant. So, but I think we just need to say it a little differently. Yeah? Okay, so he said Z is the amount of gigabytes used on your phone at any time, can change. And then DZ is, what was it again? The change in gigabytes between one value of Z and another, or one time and another. Yeah. One more person this side. What did you say? What is the distinction between Z and DZ? One more. Who's dying to share their really good answers? Is it hand? Yeah. Is it what? The derivative variable? Dividend. What was it? I'm not hearing that. I don't understand. Dependence. Dependent. Okay, sorry. Z is independent and dp is dependent. Well, they're both kind of independent variables. They're not, dz is not, so based on what z is, that doesn't necessarily determine what the next dz will be, right? Because your value of z could be 5. The next change in z could be anything. It's not fixed because we know that z is 5. So that doesn't really work. The key is that z is how much space is used up on your phone. dz would be some change in that amount of space. You use up a little more space. How much more space did you use up? You're using up less space than you did before. How much did it go down? That's dz. Okay, next one. Number 4. At first, 8.8 is being used. And then what happens? After deleting some files, 4.7 being used. So here, watch it. Ready? At first, there's 8.8. And then you're deleting files, and now there's 4.7. Watch it again, right? First, there's 8.8. You're deleting files, and now there's 4.7. Okay? Assign the values or find the values of the 3. And what's the unknown? And write a formula to compute the unknown. Go. So what are... At first, 8.8. When you're done deleting files, 4.7. Used up on your smartphone. Okay. What is Z initial? 8.8. Z final? 4.7. Therefore, the unknown is? It's DZ. DZ is what we don't know. And you've got what? Negative 4.1. This is a negative change, meaning we erased or the amount used went down. The amount used went down, therefore it's a negative change. Or it's like the length of that blue bar, right? The length of that blue bar, but a decrease in Z, so negative 4.1. Okay, if this is really easy, for some of you this feels really easy, good. This is really important. It needs to be really easy for everybody. So if you're take some work, that's okay. That's why we're taking the time to do this. This idea, when things get complicated and there's function notation and there's two quantities changing together and we've got very complicated things going on, this is very important. You have to have this down. Okay? Any questions? Any questions? Number 5. At first, 4.3. And you erased a file that was 1. Let's see if I can do that here. Okay, here we go. Ready? Here's the next one. At first, there was 4.3 gigabytes. Is that the blue bar or the red bar? At first, there was 4.3 gigabytes. Blue or red? Red bar showing the current amount of space used is 4.3. What happened? Delete a file, and the size of that file we deleted was 1. Go. Finish that problem. Started at 4.3. Watch it. Here we go. Deleted a file that was 1 gig. Finish that number, was that number 5? Okay. Z initial is 5.3. Z final is, oh sorry, 4.3. Z final is 3.3. DZ is -1. Okay? So what was the unknown here? Z final. Formula for Z final. Z final equals? Who said it? She wants ZI plus DZ. Is it right? ZI 4.3 plus DZ. What was DZ? -1. DZ is negative or positive? Negative. It's going down. DZ is negative. Therefore, do we add or subtract DZ? Add. It's built in. The negative is built in. The decrease is built in. So all we got to do is add. Z final is Z initial plus DZ. Should make sense. This is really important. It's hard for students when we get it when things are more complicated. Z final is initial Z plus the change in Z. Should make sense. Does it make sense? Ready for the next one? Okay. So now we're doing, what do we have initially? 2.6. Here we go. So we start with 2.6 used up on our phone, and we download a file that's 1.5. I can just set the animation to go here. Download a file that's 1.5. Write the values of the 3 variables, determine the unknown, write the formula for the unknown. Go. Okay, talk this one over with the person next to you. Make sure you agree. Talk it over. Okay, what was the formula? What is the formula? Nice loud. Say it again, nice and loud. Z final equals Z initial plus DZ for this last one. Agree? Okay, so I want to make a slight change to the view here. So this is what we've been saying. Does that animation? Oops. Does that animation agree with the numbers and your thinking on number 6? Did I change something? Let's see. 2.6 and add 1. Yeah, 2.6 add 1.5. Okay, consider this instead. How about this? Would this work? What's different now? What's different? Tell the person next to you. And does it work? What's different and does it work? What's different and does it work? Okay, what's different? Somebody new. What did you notice that's different now in this animation? DZ is changing with the Z. So now DZ is changing with the Z. Does that animation still line up with or jive with number 6? Does it still jive with number 6? Yeah, it's just considering now that DZ is changing along with Z, like you said. And that is the way we want to think about DZ. We want to think that Z is a variable, but then DZ is a variable too. Before we start downloading, I mean, this actually makes more sense, doesn't it? Because before we start downloading, what is the change in Z right now? There's no change, right? And then when we're half done, how much is DZ now when we're half done? 0.75, right? It's half of the total amount that we're downloading, right? So now DZ is half because it's half finished, and then when it finally gets finished, then at the very end is when DZ is 1.5. So this is actually a more accurate way to look at it. Thinking about DZ is a variable too. The amount of change is a variable too. Okay, your turn. Flip it over. Same kind of thing you're doing here. Same kind of thing you're doing here, but now just X can be any variable for any quantity. Y is a variable for any quantity. Okay? Practice, but practice your understanding, not just getting answers. You're practicing the thinking and the understanding. Read carefully. Read carefully. Is it good? Oh, good. Sweet.
So you're right. We can talk about it. We don't need to do a devastation now. So we can move on to the harder stuff.
Use the symbols. Use the symbols. Saying you don't know if it goes up or down, right? That's right. It's positive, it goes up, that's right. Read carefully. They're not all the same. Not all the same. Read carefully.
Ask your neighbor, compare it to neighbor, and then raise your hand.
Okay, if you have questions, get them answered with a person next to you or a TA. Okay, here's the big takeaway today. Given a variable x, how would you define, oh sorry, what am I doing? Okay. Given a variable x, what's the meaning of? How would you compute the change in x? Given a variable y, what's the meaning of? How would you compute the final value of y? Okay? So, you fill in the blanks. This is the big takeaway today. This is the big important takeaway that we want to ingrain in our minds. And you do it so without looking over your sheet. So hopefully it's gotten practiced enough. We can do it without looking. So to find the change in x, what will it be? Final x minus initial x. Should make sense. This just naturally makes sense. And then, given a variable y. Okay, please let me have your attention. This is the really important thing that troubles a lot of students when things get harder. Final y is initial y plus the change in y. But beyond formulas it's not formulas you memorize. Those should make sense, and hopefully this activity, it should make sense, if that's exactly what it should be. Okay, check Blackboard for